At my son's funeral, my daughter-in-law gave me 7 days to leave my own house. I just smiled, packed my bag, and quietly left. The next morning, she had an uninvited guest. The police were at her door. She thought she had won, but she didn't realize she had walked straight into a trap. And what I discovered on that laptop shattered everything I thought I knew about my son. Real quick comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Because in about 60 seconds, you're going to hear what happened at my son's funeral. And trust me, you won't believe it. The morning they buried Christopher, Charlotte woke to the kind of sky that made you believe in nothing. Gray clouds pressed low over the city, threatening rain that never quite came, just hanging there heavy and wrong the way grief sits in your chest when you're too numb to cry. I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom, the one Helen bought at an estate sale 30 years ago, and knotted my black tie for the 3rd time. My hands shook, not from age. I'm 63, not ancient, but from the simple, brutal fact that I was dressing for my son's funeral. Christopher was 32. You're not supposed to bury your children. The house felt enormous around me. 3 stories of Victorian-era craftsmanship that I had restored myself room by room, back when Christopher was still in elementary school, back when Helen was alive, back when this place felt like a home instead of a museum of everything I'd lost. By 9:30 a.m., I was sitting in the 3rd pew of St. Peter's Episcopal Church, watching 200 people file past my son's closed casket. Mahogany brass handles a spray of white leaves across the top that cost more than it should have. Crystal had insisted on the leaves. Crystal. My daughter-in-law sat beside me dressed in black Dior that probably cost $3,000. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a neat chignon. Her makeup was flawless foundation, smooth as porcelain lips the color of dried roses. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief embroidered with her initials, C.M. Crystal Morrison. But her eyes weren't red. I've been to enough funerals to know what real grief looks like. It's ugly. It's puffy eyes and running mascara, and that hollow, gutted expression that makes a person look 10 years older. Crystal looked like she'd just stepped out of a photography studio. Sad, yes. But the kind of sad you practice in a mirror, and she kept checking her phone, not obviously. She'd slip her hand into her purse, glance down for 2 seconds, then return her gaze to the altar where Father Donnelly was talking about Christopher's generous spirit and love of life. But I noticed I'm an architect. I'm trained to see details other people miss. The service lasted 40 minutes, hymns I didn't sing. A eulogy from Christopher's college roommate that made everyone laugh through their tears. Something about a road trip to Myrtle Beach and a flat tire and Christopher's terrible sense of direction. I didn't hear most of it. I was watching Crystal's profile, the way her jaw tightened every time someone mentioned Christopher's name. She wasn't grieving. She was enduring. At the cemetery, the rain finally started. Not a downpour, just a fine mist that clung to your clothes and made the grass slick under your shoes. They'd set up a green tent over the gravesite, 20 folding chairs arranged in neat rows. I sat in the front row, Crystal on my left, Christopher's best friend Marcus on my right. Father Donnelly said something about ashes and dust. The casket was lowered on mechanical straps, slow and steady into the red Carolina clay. Someone handed me a small brass shovel. I was supposed to throw dirt onto the casket, some symbolic gesture I'd done once before at Helen's funeral and hated every second of. I held the shovel, stared down into the hole. Thought about the last time I'd seen Christopher alive 10 days ago, at 2:37 in the morning, when he called me drunk or terrified or both, his voice breaking as he said, "Dad, I need to tell you something before it's too late. I never found out what he wanted to tell me." 3 days later, he was dead. Oxycodone overdose. The police called it accidental. I knew better. I tossed the dirt. It hit the casket with a sound like knuckles on a door. I handed the shovel to Crystal. She took it without looking at me, tossed her own symbolic scoop, then turned and walked back toward the line of black town cars idling on the cemetery road. That's when she said it, leaned close, her breath warm against my ear, and whispered, "We need to talk about the house tonight." Now, I'm so sorry. Not I miss him too, just we need to talk about the house. I pulled back, stared at her. Her expression was unreadable, smooth, practiced empty. She didn't wait for a response, just turned and walked away, heels sinking slightly into the wet grass. Marcus grabbed my arm. "You okay, Mr. Morrison?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Back at the house, the wake was everything I didn't want it to be. 100 people crammed into my living room and dining room, eating catered finger sandwiches and pasta salad, talking in low, respectful voices about how tragic it all was. How Christopher had so much potential. How I must be devastated. I stood in the kitchen nursing a glass of bourbon I hadn't touched and watched Crystal work the room. She moved like a hostess, refilling drinks, accepting condolences, laughing softly at someone's story about Christopher's high school baseball team. She'd changed out of the Dior and into a simpler black dress, still expensive but less showy appropriate, and people believed her. They hugged her, told her how strong she was, offered to bring her casseroless. I wanted to scream. By 7:00 p.m., most of the guests had left. A few lingered: Christopher's Aunt Karen, Marcus, a couple of neighbors. Crystal was in the hallway saying goodbye to someone I didn't recognize when she caught my eye across the room. She didn't smile, didn't frown, just looked at me with those cold, calculating eyes and said loud enough for me to hear, "Tomorrow morning, 9:00 a.m., be here." Then she walked out the front door without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my study, the room where I'd taught Christopher to draft blueprints when he was 12, where Helen and I used to sit on Sunday mornings with coffee and the newspaper and stared at the house around me. This house, 3,000 square FT of history and sweat and love. I'd bought it as a foreclosure in 1998, back when Myers Park was still affordable if you were willing to put in the work. Spent 5 years restoring it, sanding floors, rewiring electrical, rebuilding the wraparound porch. Helen picked out every paint color. Christopher helped me install the crown molding in the dining room the summer before he left for college. And now Crystal wanted to talk about it. I'm not a fool. I know what she's planning. She thinks I'm a grieving old man too broken to fight back. She thinks she can walk in here tomorrow morning with some forged documents and a lawyer's smile and take everything I've built. She's wrong. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the dark street. Somewhere out there, Crystal was probably celebrating, texting someone, planning her next move. She had no idea what was coming. I'd spent the last 6 months building a trap. A legal, airtight, perfectly constructed trap designed for exactly this moment. And tomorrow morning, when she walked through that door, she was going to step right into it. I just wish Christopher were here to see it. I whispered into the empty room, "I won't let her take this house." She underestimated me. The house didn't answer. It never does. But I made a promise anyway. I didn't sleep, but I still went through the motions. Shower, shave, coffee. By 8:45 a.m., I was standing at the front window watching the street. Crystal's white Mercedes pulled up at 8:58. I opened the door before she could knock. She stood on the porch in a cream-colored pantsuit, blonde hair pulled back tight, a leather portfolio tucked under one arm. No wedding ring. She'd worn it yesterday at the funeral, but today her left hand was bare. "Mr. Morrison," she said. "Not Dad, not Kenneth, just Mr. Morrison." "Come in." She stepped past me, heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Didn't admire the crown molding or the stained glass window or any of the details that made this house worth restoring. Just walked straight into the living room and set the portfolio on the coffee table. I followed, stood in the doorway with my arms crossed. She didn't sit, neither did I. I'll make this quick, she said, flipping open the portfolio. Inside were 2 documents. She slid the first one toward me. Christopher's will executed 6 months ago. He left everything to me. The house, his trust fund, his life insurance, everything. I picked up the will, scanned at Christopher's name at the top, my address listed as the primary asset, a notary seal in the bottom corner. And there, on the signature line, Christopher J. Morrison, written in blue ink. It looked perfect. Too perfect. Christopher's handwriting was messy, always had been. He wrote like a doctor, all loops and slants barely legible. This signature was clean, precise, the kind you'd practice in front of a mirror until you got it exactly right. This is fake, I said. Crystal didn't blink. It's notarized, witnessed by 2 attorneys. Completely legal. I set the will down. What's the second document? She slid it forward. A quit-claim deed transferring ownership of 1247 Sedgefield Road. My house from Kenneth Morrison to Crystal Morrison, effective immediately. You've got 7 days, she said, flat businesslike. I'm being generous. Legally, I could have you out tomorrow. I stared at her. She wasn't nervous, wasn't guilty, wasn't even pretending to feel bad. She stood there in my living room in the house I'd built with my own hands and looked at me like I was an inconvenience. 7 days, I repeated. 7 days. I picked up the quit-claim deed. Read it slowly. Then I set it back down and looked her in the eye. I don't need 7 days. She blinked. First crack in the mask. What, I don't need 7 days? I kept my voice calm, steady. I'll be out by tomorrow morning. Silence. Crystal stared at me like I just started speaking another language. Tomorrow, she said, tomorrow. I'll pack tonight. Be gone by sunrise. You can have the house. I watched her process. This saw the suspicion flicker. Why is he giving up so easily before the greed took over? She wanted to believe I was just a broken old man too devastated to fight back. Well, she said slowly, that's reasonable. I'm a reasonable person. She almost smiled, caught herself, nodded. I'll have my attorney draw up the final paperwork. Sure. She picked up the portfolio, walked toward the door. I followed, opened it for her. She paused on the threshold. I'm sorry it had to be like this, she said. No, she wasn't. Me too, I said. She walked to her car, got in, and drove away. I stood in the doorway and watched until the Mercedes turned the corner and disappeared. Then I closed the door, pulled out my phone, and sent a text to Detective Maria Santos. She took the bait. I'm moving out tonight. You can move at 7 a.m. 3 dots appeared immediately, then confirmed. We'll be ready. I set the phone down, looked around the house. The place Helen and I had turned from a wreck into a home. The place Christopher had grown up, the place I'd fought for and wasn't about to lose to a woman who'd murdered my son. I didn't pack. Not yet. There was no point in packing when I'd be back in 48 hours. Instead, I walked upstairs to my study, opened the bottom drawer of my desk, and pulled out a folder I'd been building for 6 months. Inside were bank statements, credit reports, notarized, affidavit recorded phone calls, and a signed cooperation agreement with the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department. Everything I needed to destroy Crystal Morrison. I'd spent 30 years as an architect. I knew how to build things, but I also knew how to design traps, how to create a structure that looked solid until the moment it collapsed. Crystal thought she'd won. She had no idea she'd just stepped into a building that was already falling. At 6:00 p.m., I checked into the Marriott on Trade Street, room 304. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out my phone, opened my photos, found the one I was looking for. Christopher, at age 8, standing on the front porch, holding a hammer, grinning like he just conquered the world. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I whispered, "Tomorrow everything changes." I didn't sleep that night either. The phone call came on a Tuesday in April, right in the middle of lunch. I was sitting at my drafting table in the study eating a turkey sandwich and reviewing blueprints for a commercial renovation downtown, a 1920s warehouse someone wanted to convert into loft apartments. Helen used to say, "I ate lunch at my desk too often that I should sit at the kitchen table like a normal person." But she'd been gone 4 years by then, and habits are hard to break when there's no one left to break them for. The phone buzzed, unknown number. I almost didn't answer probably a spam call about my car's extended warranty, but something made me pick up. Mr. Morrison, a woman's voice professional, clipped speaking. "This is Andrea Chen from Capital One Fraud Prevention. I'm calling about an unusual transaction on your account. We need to verify a recent loan application." I set down my sandwich. I didn't apply for any loan. "That's why I'm calling, sir. Someone opened an auto loan in your name 4 days ago. $78,000 for a 2024 Audi Q7. The vehicle was delivered yesterday." My stomach dropped, where I'm not supposed to give out that information, but given the circumstances, papers rustled on her end. 1847 Central Avenue Unit at 12B, Charlotte Christopher's apartment. I didn't remember hanging up. Didn't remember grabbing my keys or walking to my truck. The next thing I knew, I was driving down Central Avenue, hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, trying to convince myself there was some kind of mistake. Maybe it was identity theft. Some random criminal who'd stolen my social security number. It happened all the time, right? But criminals don't deliver stolen cars to your son's apartment. Plaza Midwood is one of those neighborhoods that's been up and coming for 20 years. Old bungalows mixed with new condos, craft breweries on every corner. Young professionals walking dogs that cost more than my first car. Christopher had moved there 2 years ago, right after he married Crystal. Said he liked being close to Uptown. Said the rent was reasonable. I pulled into the parking lot of his building, a 3-story brick complex with exterior staircases and too many plants on the balconies. And there it was, parked in spot 12. A brand new Audi Q7 Alpine white dealer plates, still on gleaming in the afternoon sun, like a 40-to-1 piece of evidence. I got out of my truck, walked over, looked through the windows, tan leather interior, touchscreen dashboard, that new car smell probably still lingering inside. $78,000 in my name. I took the stairs to the second floor, knocked on Unit 12B. Christopher answered wearing gym shorts and a Duke t-shirt, hair sticking up like he'd just woken up. He looked confused for about half a second. Then he saw my face, and the confusion turned into something else. Fear. "Dad?" he said. Whose car is that?" I pointed down at the Audi. He didn't answer, just stood there blocking the doorway looking like a kid caught stealing candy. "Christopher, whose car? It's mine." "Yours." I kept my voice level, calm, the way you talk when you're one sentence away from losing it completely. "And how exactly did you pay for a $78,000 car?" His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Dad, I can explain. Did you forge my signature silence? I repeated slower this time. "Forge my signature on a loan application." "No." His voice cracked. "I didn't. Crystal did." "I don't remember stepping into the apartment. Don't remember closing the door." But suddenly we were standing in his living room. Expensive furniture, hardwood, floors, a flat-screen TV the size of a window, and Christopher was collapsing onto the couch, head in his hands. She said she needed it for her business. He said, voice muffled. Said the car was for client meetings. She said she'd applied for loans in her name, but none of them went through. And if she didn't have reliable transportation, she'd lose her biggest account. So she stole my identity. And she said it wasn't stealing. She said you'd never even notice. She said we'd pay it off before you found out and then everything would be fine. I stared at him, at my son, the kid I'd taught to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to use a level and a measuring tape. The kid who used to help me sand floors on weekends, who'd stood beside me at Helen's funeral and held my hand during the eulogy. And he'd let his wife steal from me. How long has this been going on? I asked. Christopher looked up. His eyes were red. Just this once, I swear, Dad. Just the car. Don't lie to me. I'm not Dwaz Christopher. I stepped closer. How long? He broke, tears streaming down his face, hands shaking. I don't know, maybe a year. She'd asked me for your information, social security number, birthday, bank account. She said it was for insurance stuff, for adding you as an emergency contact. I didn't know she was opening accounts. A full year of fraud? And my son had helped. Does she have gambling debts? I asked. Drugs? What does she need the money for? I don't know. She doesn't tell me. She just says we need it, that we're building a future, that once her business takes off, we'll pay everything back. Her business? I almost laughed. She doesn't have a business, Christopher. She has a credit card and a talent for lying. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I took a breath, forced myself to think like an architect instead of a father. Assess the damage. Figure out what's salvageable. Make a plan. Here's what's going to happen. I said, you're going to pay off that car loan every cent. I don't care if you have to sell everything you own. And Crystal stops immediately. No more applications, no more cards, nothing. If I see one more fraudulent charge, I'm calling the police. Do you understand? Christopher nodded, wiping his face with the back of his hand. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to think this was just a mistake, a moment of weakness, something we could fix. But as I walked back to my truck, past that brand new Audi gleaming in the sunlight, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. I didn't drive home. I drove to the library on East Boulevard, parked, and used one of their computers to pull my credit report. It took 15 minutes to load another 10 to read through. 5 credit cards I'd never opened. Total balance $71. A home equity line of credit on my house, the house I'd paid off 10 years ago. Amount borrowed $225,000. The car loan $78,000. Total $374,000. All of it opened over the last 18 months. All of it in my name. All of it tied back to an address I didn't recognize and a phone number that wasn't mine. This wasn't one mistake. This wasn't Christopher being weak or Crystal being desperate. This was systematic, organized, planned. I sat there in the library surrounded by people checking out books and using the computers, and felt the floor drop out from under me. Not because of the money. I could survive the money. Because my son, my only child, had helped someone rob me blind. I pulled out my phone, called Edward Mitchell, my attorney since 1995. He answered on the second ring. Kenneth, everything okay? No, I said, I need to see you tomorrow morning, first thing. What's wrong? I looked at the credit report on the screen, at the list of accounts I'd never opened, at the total climbing toward $400 and $1,000. I think my son is trying to steal everything I have. Edward Mitchell's office occupied the entire 20th floor of the Duke Energy Center on South Tryon Street. Floor to ceiling windows. View of the Charlotte skyline stretching out in every direction. Furniture that costs more than most people's cars. The kind of place that reminded you why Edward charged $500 an hour and was worth every cent. I arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, carrying a manila folder stuffed with printouts, credit reports, bank statements, loan applications, the dealership paperwork for the Audi evidence. Every page another nail in Crystal's coffin or Christopher's. I wasn't sure yet. Edward's secretary, a woman named Patricia, who'd been with him for 20 years, showed me to the conference room. Glass table, leather chairs, a coffee station in the corner, with the kind of espresso machine you see in Italian restaurants. He'll be right with you, Mr. Morrison, Patricia said. Can I get you anything coffee black? She nodded and left. I sat down, set the folder on the table, and stared out at the city below. From 20 stories up, Charlotte looked clean organized, like someone had planned it all out on a drafting table, every street, and building exactly where it was supposed to be. I used to think my life was like that, carefully designed under control. The door opened. Edward walked in carrying a legal pad and his own coffee. He was 58, silver hair, three-piece suit, the kind of lawyer who looked like he belonged in a courtroom, arguing Supreme Court cases instead of handling real estate contracts and trust funds. "Kenneth," he said, shaking my hand. "You sounded serious on the phone." "I am." He sat down across from me, opened his legal pad. "Tell me what's going on." I slid the folder across the table. He didn't open it right away. Just looked at me, reading my face the way good lawyers do, assessing how bad this was going to be before he even saw the evidence. Then he opened it and didn't say a word for 45 minutes. I watched him read, watched his expression shift from curious to concerned to something close to anger. He made notes on his legal pad, circled things, drew arrows connecting one document to another. Twice he got up and refilled his coffee without speaking. When he finally closed the folder, he set it down carefully, like it might explode. "Jesus, Kenneth." "Yeah." "How long has this been going on? 18 months, maybe longer?" "I just found out yesterday." Edward picked up his pen, tapped it against the table. "Okay, let me make sure I understand. 5 credit cards, total balance $71,000. A home equity line of credit against your house, which you own outright for $225,000. And a car loan for $78,000. Correct. All opened in your name, all tied to addresses and phone numbers you don't recognize. Correct? And your son's wife, Crystal, is responsible." I hesitated. Christopher gave her my information. He says he didn't know what she was doing with it. Edward raised an eyebrow. "Do you believe him?" I didn't answer right away. Sat there staring at the folder, thinking about Christopher collapsing on his couch yesterday, crying, swearing it was just one mistake. "I wanna," I said finally. "But I don't know." Edward nodded slowly, flipped through the folder again, pulled out the credit report. Learn, Kenneth. If they default on any of this, and they will because Crystal doesn't have the income to cover it, the banks will come after you. They'll garnish your accounts, put liens on your property. If the HELOC defaults, they can foreclose on your house. I know you could lose everything." "I know." Silence. Edward sat down. The report leaned back in his chair. "What do you want to do?" I'd been thinking about that all night, lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios like I was designing a building. What's the foundation? What are the load-bearing walls? What happens if this collapses? I don't want to send my son to prison, I said. Then your options are limited. Edward ticked them off on his fingers. Option 1, you report this to the police. Identity theft, bank fraud, wire fraud, federal charges. Crystal goes to prison for 10 to 15 years. Christopher, if he's complicit, goes with her. I flinched. Option 2, you file a civil suit. Sue Crystal for the money, quiet. No criminal charges. But it takes years, costs a fortune, and legal fees, and there's no guarantee you'll recover anything. And option 3, you do nothing. Eat the loss. Pay off the debts yourself. Hope they stop. They won't stop, I said. Edward nodded. No, they won't. I stood up, walked to the window, looked down at the streets below the cars, moving like toys, people the size of ants. From up here, problems looked small, manageable. But I wasn't up here. I was down there in the middle of it with a daughter-in-law trying to rob me blind and a son who either didn't know or didn't care. There's a fourth option, I said. Edward waited. I protect my assets. Freeze my credit dispute. The charges make it impossible for Crystal to do this again, and I give Christopher one last chance to walk away from her. And if he doesn't, then I go to the police. Edward wrote something on his legal pad. What about the trust fund, Christopher's trust fund? $2. 5 million that Helen and I had set up when he was born. Locked until he turned 35, unless he met certain conditions: marriage, buying a house, starting a business. He'd accessed part of it when he married Crystal, used $50,000 as a down payment on a condo he later sold. If Crystal got her hands on the rest of it, she'd drain it in 6 months. We need to protect it, I said. How? I turned from the window. You're the lawyer. You tell me. Edward tapped his pen against the table again, thinking. Then we amend the trust. Add a clause that disqualifies Crystal from any inheritance if she's convicted or even accused of fraud against you. Can we do that? It's your trust. You're the grantor. As long as Christopher is still alive and hasn't accessed the full amount, we can modify the terms. Do it. Edward made another note. This kind of clause, we call it a poison pill in estate law. If Crystal tries to go after your assets, she automatically loses Christopher's inheritance. It's a deterrent. Good. I want her deterred. Kenneth Edwards set down his pen, looked at me seriously. If you do this, if you amend the trust and start freezing accounts, Crystal's going to know something's wrong. She might escalate. Get desperate. I know. And if Christopher's involved, if he's been helping her, this could destroy your relationship with him. I thought about that, about the kid who used to help me on job sites, who'd sat beside me at Helen's funeral, who'd called me dad with genuine love in his voice. Then I thought about $78,000 worth of Audi parked outside his apartment. It's already destroyed, I said. Edward nodded slowly, closed his legal pad. Okay, I'll draft the trust amendment today. Have it ready for your signature by Friday. But Kenneth, if you're serious about protecting yourself, you need to do one more thing. What's that? Talk to the police. Not to file charges, not yet. But open a file. Get a detective involved. Start a paper trail. So when Crystal makes her next move, and she will, you're ready. You know someone? Edward smiled slightly. I know someone. Detective Maria Santos, Economic Crimes Unit. She's good discreet. She'll understand what you're trying to do. I nodded. Set it up. Edward stood, extended his hand. You're doing the right thing. I shook his hand. But as I walked out of that office, rode the elevator down 20 floors, stepped back out onto Tryon Street into the morning heat, I didn't feel like I was doing the right thing. I felt like I was building a trap, and I had no idea whether I was trapping Crystal or my own son. The trust amendment sat on Edward's conference table like a loaded gun, 32 pages, single-spaced legal terminology so dense you'd need a dictionary and a law degree to parse half of it. But buried in Section 7, subsection C, was the sentence that mattered. In the event that any secondary beneficiary is accused, charged, or convicted of fraud, theft, or any financial crime against the grantor, said beneficiary shall be immediately disqualified from inheritance, and all assets shall transfer to the Charlotte Community Foundation. Edward slid the document across the table. Sign here page 31, and initial pages 12 and 18 and 24. I picked up the pen, stared at the signature line. This wasn't just paperwork. This was a trap door. The kind architects build into structures when they know something might go wrong. A way to isolate the damage, contain the collapse, protect what's left. If Crystal came after me when she came after me, this clause would detonate. She'd lose everything. $2.5 million gone, not to her, not to Christopher. To charity, a poison pill. You sure this is legal? I asked completely. You're the grantor. As long as Christopher hasn't accessed the full trust, you have the right to modify the terms. Edward tapped the page. And this clause activates the moment Crystal is formally accused of fraud against you. Not convicted, just accused. Police report, charges filed, that's enough. And Christopher, if he's charged alongside her, same rules apply. He loses access too. I set down the pen. He's my son, Edward. I know. If I sign this, I'm essentially betting against him, assuming he won't do the right thing. Edward leaned back in his chair, looked at me with the kind of calm directness that comes from 30 years of dealing with families tearing themselves apart over money. "Kenneth," he said quietly, $374,000, 18 months, and he knew. Maybe he didn't forge the signatures himself, but he gave Crystal the information. He enabled this. I wanted to argue, wanted to say Christopher was just scared, manipulated, weak, but I couldn't. "Sign the document," Edward said. "Give him a chance to walk away from her. If he does, this clause never activates. If he doesn't," he shrugged. "At least you protected yourself." I signed 10 minutes, 4 signatures, 2 initials. The trap was set. Detective Maria Santos worked out of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's Economic Crimes Unit, a division housed in a low brick building on Eastway Drive that looked more like a DMV than a police station. No flashing lights, no patrol cars, just a parking lot full of sedans and a glass door with a buzzer. Edward had called ahead. Santos was expecting me. She met me in the lobby, mid-40s black pantsuit, dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, the kind of woman who looked like she didn't tolerate excuses or wasted time. We shook hands. Her grip was firm. "Mr. Morrison, follow me." She led me down a hallway lined with cubicles, detectives on phones typing reports, drinking coffee from mugs that said things like "World's Okayest Detective," and into a small conference room, table, chairs, whiteboard, nothing else. She closed the door, sat down, opened a folder. "Edward sent me your documentation." "I've reviewed it." She looked up. "This is bad. I know. 5 credit cards, Helilock, auto loan, total fraud, $374,000 over 18 months. She tapped the folder. "That's organized, systematic. This isn't someone making a mistake. This is someone running a scheme." My daughter-in-law. Crystal Morrison, age 29. No prior arrests, no criminal record. Santos flipped a page, but I ran her background. She's been married twice before Christopher. Both marriages ended in less than 2 years. Both ex-husbands filed restraining orders. I blinked. Christopher never mentioned that. He probably didn't know or didn't want to know. Santos closed the folder. "Mr. Morrison, if we pursue this, Crystal's looking at federal charges, bank fraud, wire fraud, identity theft. She could get 10 to 15 years. Good. And if your son helped her, if he knowingly provided your information, he's looking at charges too." I didn't say anything. Santos leaned forward. "Is that what you want?" "Your son in federal prison." "No." "Then why are you here?" I met her eyes. "I'm here because I want a record. I want someone official to know what's happening. So if Crystal escalates, if she tries something worse, there's a paper trail, evidence, a file." "You're building a case?" "I'm protecting myself." Santos studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, I'll open an investigation, confidential. No charges yet. We'll monitor her activity flag. Any new accounts opened in your name track where the money's going." "How long will it take?" 3 to 6 months, maybe longer. This kind of fraud is complicated. We need to prove intent, trace the money, build an airtight case. She paused. "But Mr. Morrison, if we find evidence that Christopher was actively involved, I have to charge him. I can't look the other way. I understand." "Do you?" Santos's voice was sharp. "Because once I open this file, it doesn't close. If we find something, we act on it, even if it destroys your family." I thought about Christopher, about the kid who used to sit on the porch with me, who'd cried at his mother's funeral, who promised me 2 days ago that the car loan was just one mistake. Then I thought about $374,000. "Open the file," I said. Santos nodded, wrote something in her folder. "I'll need copies of everything. Credit reports, bank statements, the car loan paperwork, and I'll need you to file a formal identity theft report. I'll get it to you by tomorrow." She stood, extended her hand. "One more thing, Mr. Morrison. If Crystal figures out you're investigating her, she might panic. Do something reckless. Be careful. I will. I walked out of that police station into the late afternoon heat, got in my truck, and sat there for a long time staring at the steering wheel. The trap was set. The poison pill was armed. Detective Santos was building a case. I thought I had time, months, maybe even years. I thought Christopher would wake up, leave Crystal, do the right thing. I thought I could protect him and protect myself. I was wrong about all of it. The phone rang at 2:37 a.m. I know the exact time because I was staring at the clock when it started, one of those nights where sleep won't come. Where you lie in the dark, replaying conversations, recalculating numbers, wondering if you made the right choices. 5 months since I'd signed the trust amendment. 5 months since Santos opened her investigation. 5 months of waiting for Crystal to make her next move. The phone buzzed on the nightstand screen, glowing. Christopher Mobile. My son never called at 2:37 in the morning. I grabbed it. Christopher, Dad. His voice cracked, slurred. Drunk or terrified, or both. I need to tell you something before it's too late. I sat up, turned on the lamp. What's wrong? Where are you? Home. I'm home. Crystal's asleep. I pause. Breathing. Dad? I need to tell you the truth. All of it. My chest tightened. Okay, I'm listening. I helped her. The words came out fast, desperate. I didn't just give her your information. I helped her. I gave her your social security number, your birthday, your bank account numbers. I knew what she was doing, Dad. I knew. I didn't say anything. Just sat there holding the phone, feeling the foundation crack open beneath me. There's this. I owe money. A lot of money. $300,000. His voice broke. I was gambling. Vegas online poker. Crystal found out. She said she'd pay off the debt if I helped her. Said we'd take out loans in your name, pay them back before you noticed, and then we'd be free. I believed her. I'm so stupid. I'm so Christopher. I kept my voice steady. How long ago was this? A year? Maybe more? I don't know anymore. She kept asking for more information, more access, and I kept giving it to her because I thought if I just did what she said, she'd fix everything. A year. My son had been lying to me for a year. Dad? I know you're building a case against her. I know you went to the police. I saw the papers on your desk when I was there last month. He was crying now, full sobs. I deserve to go to prison. I know I do. When this is over, don't protect me. Tell them the truth. Tell them I helped. Christopher, promise me, please. I need to know that when this ends, someone will tell the truth. I closed my eyes. I promise. Thank you. He took a shaking breath. But Dad, there's something else. Something worse? Worse? How could it possibly be worse? Crystal's been asking about your medications, your prescriptions. She keeps going through your medicine cabinet when we visit. Last week she asked me how to get into your house when you're not there. His voice dropped to a whisper. Dad, I think she's planning something. Something bad. Ice ran down my spine. What kind of medications? I don't know. Pain pills, I think. She said something about oxycodone. Said old people always have it lying around. He was talking faster now. Words tumbling over each other. Dad, I'm scared. I think she's going to try to hurt you or frame you, or I don't know. But she keeps asking about the pills, and she keeps asking about your house and I. Christopher, listen to me. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the street was empty. Dark. I need you to tell me exactly what she said. She wanted to know where you keep your medications, what prescriptions you have, how many pills, if anyone checks them, if you'd notice if some went missing. He paused. Dad, what if she's trying to poison you? My mind raced. I did have oxycodone prescribed 6 months ago after I threw my back out moving furniture. 30 pills. I'd taken maybe 5. The rest were still in the medicine cabinet in my upstairs bathroom. Does she have a key to my house? I asked. Silence. Christopher, does she have a key? I gave her the spare last month. She said she needed it in case of emergency. His voice cracked again. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't think it's okay. Listen, I'm going to hang up and call Detective Santos. You need to. No, he cut me off. Don't tell her I called, please. If Crystal finds out I talked to you, He stopped. Just be careful, Dad. Lock your doors. Hide the pills. Don't trust her. I won't. Another long pause. Then so quiet. I almost didn't hear it. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry I let you down. I'm sorry I disappointed you. Christopher, tell Mom I'm sorry. Tell her I tried. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in my hand, staring at the screen. Call ended. Duration 4, 12:12. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The last conversation I'd ever have with my son. I didn't waste time. Called Santos. She answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. Morrison, it's 3:00 in the morning. Crystal's been asking about my medications. Oxycodone specifically. My son thinks she's planning to use them. Silence. Then are you sure he just called me terrified? Said she's been asking where I keep pills, how many I have. If I'd notice if they went missing? Jesus. I heard rustling. Santos getting out of bed. Okay, first thing, check your medicine cabinet right now. Count every pill. If anything's missing, don't touch the bottle. Call me back immediately. I was already moving, phone pressed to my ear, taking the stairs 2 at a time to the second floor bathroom. Flipped on the light, opened the cabinet. The orange prescription bottle was there and pushed to the back behind the ibuprofen and antacids. I pulled it out, shook it. Light. Too light. I unscrewed the cap, counted. 12 pills. I'd had 15 pills. Gone. They're missing. I said 15. Santos swore. Okay, put the bottle down. Don't touch it anymore. We'll dust it for prints. Kenneth, listen to me. If Crystal has access to your house, if she's already taken pills, she's escalating. We need to move fast. How fast? I'll push the warrant through tomorrow. We'll have everything ready by Friday. But Kenneth? She paused. Your son? If he helped her, if he gave her access to your house, to your medications, I have to include him in the charges. I know. Are you prepared for that? I looked at the pill bottle in my hand. Thought about Christopher's voice on the phone, breaking, begging me to tell the truth. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. 10 days later, my son was dead. The medical examiner ruled it accidental. Oxycodone overdose. Said Christopher had a history of back pain. Must have been self-medicating. Took too much by mistake. But I knew Christopher didn't have back pain, knew he didn't take pills, knew that the oxycodone in his system came from somewhere else, came from someone else. And I knew that the last thing my son did before he died was try to warn me, try to save me. He just couldn't save himself. The wake ended at 7:00 p.m. I stood in the kitchen, watching the last guests filter out through the front door. Neighbors offering casseroles they'd never pick up. Christopher's college friends promising to stay in touch. Father Donnelly clasping my hand saying something about God's plan that I didn't hear and didn't believe. Crystal stood in the living room collecting empty glasses, straightening throw pillows, moving through my house like she already owned it. She'd changed out of her funeral black into jeans and a sweater, comfortable casual, the uniform of someone settling in for the long haul. At 7:20, she grabbed her purse from the hall table. I'm exhausted. I'll see you tomorrow morning. 9 sharp. 9 sharp, I repeated. She left without another word. I watched through the window as her Mercedes backed out of the driveway, tail lights disappearing down Sedgefield Road. Then I locked the front door and went upstairs. I'd planned this part carefully. No emotional goodbyes, no wandering through rooms saying farewell to memories. Just logistics. Execute the plan. Get out clean. From the closet in my bedroom, I pulled out a black duffel bag. The same one I'd used for job sites back when I was still doing hands-on work. Canvas heavy-duty zippers big enough for 3 days of clothes and not much else. I packed methodically 2 pairs of jeans, 3 shirts, underwear, socks, toiletries from the bathroom. My medication, not the oxycodone I'd already given that bottle to Santos, for evidence just the blood pressure pills and vitamins. Then the important stuff. My backup laptop. The old Dell I kept in the study. The one that wasn't connected to any cloud services. The one Crystal didn't know existed. 2 encrypted USB drives. 6 months of evidence, bank statements, credit reports, recorded phone calls, screenshots of text messages. Every piece of documentation Edward and I had compiled backed up twice, labeled with dates and case numbers. A burner phone, prepaid, untraceable. Santos had given it to me 2 weeks ago, told me to use it if I needed to reach her without Crystal tracking the call. The legal folder trust amendment power of attorney. Copies of everything Edward had filed with the court, proof that I'd protected my assets months before Crystal made her move. I zipped the bag, set it by the bedroom door, looked around this room. Helen and I had painted it sage green in 1997. She'd picked out the curtains, the dresser, the reading chair by the window, where she used to sit on Sunday mornings with her coffee, and the crossword puzzle. After she died, I'd left everything exactly as it was. Couldn't bring myself to change it. Now I was leaving it to Crystal temporarily. I grabbed the duffel, started down the hallway toward the stairs, and heard a car door slam outside. I froze. Footsteps on the porch, a key in the lock. Crystal's voice irritated. I know I left it here. She was back. I didn't panic, didn't run, just walked calmly down the stairs, duffel in hand, as Crystal came through the front door. She stopped when she saw me, eyes flicking from my face to the bag. Going somewhere, she asked. Hotel, like I said this morning. I'll be gone by tomorrow, right? She walked past me into the living room, started scanning the coffee table, the mantel. I forgot my phone charger. White cable. Have you seen it? No. She found it plugged into an outlet by the couch, wrapped it around her hand, shoved it in her purse, then turned and looked at me again. Really looked at me. You're very calm, she said slowly. I buried my son this morning. I know, but most people, she tilted her head. Most people would be falling apart, begging for more time, fighting me. A pause. You're just leaving. I met her eyes. The house doesn't matter, Crystal. My son is dead. Nothing else matters. She studied me for another long moment. I could see her brain working, turning over the variables, trying to figure out if I was broken or planning something. But greed won. It always does. Okay, she said finally. I'll see you tomorrow to sign the final paperwork. Sure. She left for real this time. I waited 20 minutes, stood by the window watching the street, making sure she didn't come back a second time. Then I picked up the duffel and walked through my house one last time. I didn't linger. Didn't let myself. Living room, the couch. Helen picked out the bookshelf I'd built, the fireplace we'd sat in front of on winter nights. Dining room, the table where Christopher did his homework, where we'd eaten Sunday dinners, where I'd signed the trust amendment 5 months ago. Kitchen, the coffee maker, the worn linoleum, the window that looked out onto the backyard, where I'd taught Christopher to throw a baseball, study my drafting table, the blueprints, the photos on the wall of buildings I had designed, projects I'd finished, a career I'd built from nothing. Every room, a memory, every memory, a knife. I walked to the front door, locked it behind me, got in my truck, drove 3 blocks, pulled over, took out the burner phone, texted Santos, I'm out. You're clear for 7 a.m., 3 dots. Then copy that. Stay safe. I drove downtown, checked into the Marriott on Trade Street. Same hotel as last time. Same room. 3004. The clerk didn't ask questions, just handed me a key card and said breakfast started at 6. I rode the elevator up, unlocked the door, set the duffel on the bed. The room was generic, beige walls, floral, bedspread landscape painting that could have been anywhere. The kind of place designed to be forgotten the moment you leave. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out my phone. My real phone, the one Crystal didn't know I'd kept, and opened my photos. Christopher 3 years ago, standing on the front porch, arm around Crystal, both of them smiling. This was right after they got engaged. He'd brought her to the house for Sunday dinner, introduced her as the one looked at me with so much hope in his eyes. I'd liked her then. Thought she was good for him. Thought she made him happy. I was wrong about everything. I set the phone down, looked at the digital clock on the nightstand. 9:47 p.m. 9 hours and 13 minutes until Santos knocked on Crystal's door. 9 hours and 13 minutes until the trap I'd spent 6 months building finally sprung. I whispered to the empty room. I'll keep my promise. I'll tell the whole truth about Crystal. About the fraud, about the murder, and about Christopher's role in all of it. I owed him that much. The truth, even if it destroyed his memory. Even if people remembered him as a criminal instead of a victim. Because that's what he'd asked for. On that last phone call at 2:37 in the morning, his voice breaking, "Don't protect me, tell the truth." So I would. I turned off the light, lay back on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. I didn't sleep that night, just counted down the hours waiting for morning, waiting for justice, waiting for the world to know what Crystal had done. I woke at 6:30 a.m. to gray light filtering through hotel curtains. Woke isn't the right word. I'd been lying there for hours, fully dressed, watching shadows shift across the ceiling, listening to the hum of the air conditioning unit and the muffled sounds of the city waking up outside. Police sirens, garbage trucks, someone's car alarm going off 3 blocks away. I got up, splashed water on my face, made coffee from the single-serve machine on the bathroom counter. Weak, bitter, the kind of coffee that exists purely for function. I stood by the window, holding the styrofoam cup, watching Charlotte come to life below me. Headlights on Trade Street streetlights clicking off one by one, a woman jogging past with a dog, the world continuing like nothing was about to happen. But 3 miles away in Myers Park, Detective Maria Santos was already awake, already moving, already preparing to knock on Crystal's door, my door with a warrant, and 2 uniformed officers. I checked my phone. 6:42 a.m. 18 minutes. The minutes crawled. I sat in the chair by the window, phone in my lap, coffee going cold in my hand, didn't turn on the TV, didn't read the news, just sat. At 6:55, I started counting. 6:56, 6:57. Is Santos in her car right now, driving down Sharon Road, past the coffee shops and boutiques towards Sedgefield? Is she checking her notes, running through the script she'll use when Crystal opens the door 6:58? Is Crystal awake yet, or is she still asleep in my guest room, dreaming about spending $2.5 million, about redecorating the living room, about selling the house for a profit, and moving somewhere expensive, like 59? Does she know? Does she feel it coming 7 a.m.? Somewhere 3 miles away? Santos was knocking on the door. I couldn't see it, couldn't hear it, but I felt it the exact moment the trap closed. I imagined it anyway. Santos in a dark blazer badge clipped to her belt, standing on my front porch. 2 officers behind her, 1 male, 1 female, both in uniform. Santos knocking, 3 sharp raps, official, authoritative, footsteps inside, locks turning, Crystal opening the door in pajamas, hair messy, face confused. "Can I help you?" Santos holding up her badge. "Crystal Morrison. I'm Detective Maria Santos, Charlotte Mecklenburg Police. We have a warrant for your arrest and a warrant to search this residence." Crystal's face going white, but there must be some mistake. Santos calm and professional. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for bank fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes against Kenneth Morrison. You have the right to remain silent." Crystal's voice rising. "This is Kenneth. He's lying. He's trying to frame me. But Santos doesn't argue, just keeps reading the Miranda rights, while one of the officers steps forward with handcuffs. And Crystal realizes finally too late that she walked right into it. 7:05. Still no text. I stared at my phone, willed it to buzz. What if something went wrong? What if the warrant didn't go through? What if Crystal saw them coming and ran 7:08? What if she's gone? What if she emptied my accounts overnight and disappeared? 17:10. My chest tightened, hands shaking. I set down the coffee cup before I dropped it. Did I miscalculate? Did I miss something, Senor Sun 12? I stood up, paced to the bathroom and back. Checked my phone again. Nothing. 7:14. The phone buzzed. I grabbed it so fast I almost dropped it. Text from Santos. Done. She's in custody. Securing evidence now. I exhaled. Didn't realize I'd been holding my breath. Read the message again. Done. She's in custody. Crystal Morrison, arrested, handcuffed, sitting in the back of a police car right now trying to figure out how this happened. How the man she thought was a broken, grieving fool had outmaneuvered her so completely. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, satisfied. Instead, I felt hollow. I sat back down in the chair, stared at the phone in my hand. She's in custody. Good. That's what I wanted. What I'd spent 6 months planning. She deserved it. She'd stolen from me, manipulated my son, murdered him. So why didn't I feel anything? I looked out the window. The city was fully awake now. People walking to work, cars stuck in traffic life, moving forward oblivious. 3 miles away, my house was a crime scene. Yellow tape across the porch. Officers walking through the rooms, photographing evidence, dusting for fingerprints, bagging documents. Neighbors standing on their lawns, whispering, wondering what happened to the nice architect whose son just died. And somewhere in a holding cell at the Mecklenburg County Jail, Crystal was sitting in an orange jumpsuit, asking for a lawyer, probably still convinced she could talk her way out of this. She couldn't. I'd made sure of that. I typed back to Santos. Thank you. What happens now? 3 dots appeared. Then processing her. Arraignment tomorrow. I'll call you this afternoon. We need to go through the house. Might find more evidence. More evidence. I stared at those words. Santos was thorough. She wouldn't just arrest Crystal and call it done. She'd search every drawer, every closet, every file cabinet. She'd take Crystal's laptop, her phone, her documents, and if there was anything in that house, anything that proved Christopher was involved, anything that showed what really happened the night he died, Santos would find it. I set the phone down, whispered to the empty room, "What are you going to find?" The call came at 10:02 a.m. I was still in the hotel room staring at my phone at Santos's text from 2 hours ago. Done. She's in custody when it rang. Not a text this time. A call. Santos's voice was tight, professional, but urgent. Mr. Morrison? I need you to come to the station now. What's wrong? We found something. Something you need to see. Oh, what kind of something? A pause. I can't discuss it over the phone. How soon can you get here? I grab my keys. 20 minutes. I'll be waiting. The Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department's Economic Crimes Unit looked different in daylight. Less institutional, more like an office building where people filed taxes or applied for permits. I parked in the visitor lot, walked through the glass doors, showed my ID to the front desk clerk. Santos met me in the lobby. No pleasantries, no small talk, just follow me. She led me down the hallway past the cubicles, past the break room with its burnt coffee smell, and into a conference room at the far end of the building. Windowless fluorescent lights, a long table covered in evidence bags. I stopped in the doorway. The table was a collage of my stolen life. Bank statements in clear plastic sleeves, credit card applications with forged signatures, printouts of wire transfers, the fake will. Crystal had shown me yesterday the quit-claim deed photographs of documents I'd never seen, accounts I didn't know existed, loans taken out in my name, a paper trail of theft stretching back 18 months. But in the center of the table, isolated from everything else, sat a silver laptop. MacBook Pro 13 in, a small dent in the corner of the case. Crystals. Santos closed the door behind me, gestured to a chair. Sit. I sat. She pulled out the chair across from me. Between us, the laptop sat like a bomb waiting to detonate. We found it in a locked drawer in the guest bedroom, Santos said, hidden under a stack of blankets. Crystal tried to factory reset it before we arrived, probably heard us at the door and panicked, but she didn't finish. Our tech specialist, Lisa Morgan, recovered the hard drive, and Santos opened the laptop. The screen glowed to life. Desktop wallpaper, a generic beach sunset, a dozen folders arranged in neat rows. There's a lot here, Santos said. Financial records, scanned documents, spreadsheets tracking the fraud, every account she opened, every dollar she stole, organized by date. She tapped one folder. But that's not what I called you about. She clicked on a folder labeled Insurance. Inside were 3 files, audio files, MP3 format, each one labeled with a name and a timestamp. Recording 01 Christopher Plan MP3 April 18th recording, Zo2 Crystal Backup MP3 May 9th recording, Bazzer 3 Final MP3 October 12th. I stared at the dates, April, May, October 12th, the night Christopher died. I asked, my voice didn't sound like mine. Santos's face was grim recordings. Crystal kept them as insurance. We think proof of what she was planning, or proof to use against someone if things went wrong. Proof of what Santos leaned forward. Mr. Morrison, before I play these, I need you to understand something. What you're about to hear, it's going to be difficult. It's going to change everything you think you know about your son. About his relationship with Crystal. About the night he died. My chest tightened. Just tell me. The first recording is from 6 weeks before Christopher died. It's a conversation between him and Crystal. They're discussing... She hesitated. They're discussing a plan to fake Christopher's death, to collect on his life insurance and his trust fund. The room tilted. What the second recording is 3 weeks later. It's just Crystal talking to herself, or maybe recording notes. She's revising the plan, deciding that Christopher is a liability that she needs to Santos stopped swallowed. The third recording is from the night Christopher died. It's audio of what happened, of Crystal giving him the pills, of him realizing what she was doing. I couldn't breathe. Christopher knew, Santos said quietly. About the fraud, about the plan. He was part of it, Mr. Morrison, at least at first. And then Crystal decided she didn't need him anymore. I stared at the laptop, at those 3 files, 3 pieces of evidence that would destroy everything I had left of my son. I want to hear them, I said. Santos shook her head. Mr. Morrison, I want to hear them. Kenneth. She used my first name. Rare. These recordings are evidence in a murder investigation. Once you hear them, you can't unhear them. You'll know exactly what your son did, what he planned, what he said. And you'll know exactly how he died. Good, I said. That's what I want. The truth, all of it. Santos studied my face, looking for cracks for doubt, for any sign I wasn't ready. But I'd been ready since 2:37 a.m. 10 days ago when Christopher called me crying, begging me not to protect him, asking me to tell the truth. This was the truth. Play it, I said. Santos hesitated one more second. Then she reached for the laptop, clicked on the first file, recording Don Christopher Plan Don MP3, and pressed play. The laptop speakers crackled. 2 seconds of static. Then a voice. Christopher's voice. You sure this will work? What if he finds out I stopped breathing? It was him, not a memory, not an echo in my head. Him, his voice, real, alive. like he was sitting in this room with us 3 feet away talking like he'd never died at all. My hands gripped the edge of the table knuckles white. Santos sat across from me, watching her face, unreadable, professional. She'd probably heard these recordings a dozen times already, sitting in her office taking notes, building her case. But for me, this was the first time, the only time. The moment everything I thought I knew about my son shattered into 1,000 pieces I'd never be able to put back together. I didn't ask her to stop. A second voice. Female, calm, steady. Crystal, he won't find out. Your dad's 63, Kenneth. He's grieving. He's lonely. We take everything before he even realizes what's happening. Christopher laughed, nervous, uncertain. The kind of laugh he used to make when he was a kid, and knew he was about to do something he shouldn't. He's not stupid, Crystal. He built a career on paying attention to details. Details and blueprints not in his own family. Her voice was cold, clinical, like she was discussing quarterly earnings or a real estate investment. He trusts you. He loves you. That's his weakness. Silence on the recording. Background noise filled the gap. A TV playing in another room. Voices from a commercial, the hum of traffic outside a window. I tried to place it, tried to figure out where they were. Christopher's apartment, probably the living room with the expensive furniture Crystal had insisted on. The couch I'd helped him move in. Christopher's voice came back quieter now. How much are we talking? $800,000 in life insurance? $2.5 million in the trust fund. Total $3.3 million. I felt my chest cave in. Felt the air leave my lungs and not come back. $3.3 million, that's what my son's life was worth to her. To them, that's what they thought I was worth. A number. A payout. A ticket to a new life somewhere I'd never find them. Christopher whistled low. That's Jesus. That's a lot of money. It's freedom, baby. Crystal's voice warmed, got excited like she was describing a vacation or a dream house. No more debt. No more Vegas calling about what you owe. No more looking over our shoulders. We do this right, we disappear. New names, new life. Mexico maybe, or Costa Rica? Somewhere the extradition laws are murky, and they don't ask too many questions. And how exactly do we do this right? Christopher asked. He sounded curious now. Interested, not scared, not guilty, just interested. Crystal's voice shifted, got sharper, more focused, like she'd been rehearsing this pitch for weeks. We fake your death. Make it look like an accident car crash, maybe, or a fall, something sudden but believable. I file for the insurance as your grieving widow. The trust fund transfers to me as your surviving spouse per the terms your parents set up. 6 months later, you resurface in Mexico with a new passport, new name, new identity. We split the money 50-50 and live like kings. Wait, Christopher interrupted. I could hear him thinking, wheels turning. The trust dad set that up with conditions. I have to be 35 to access the full amount. I'm only 32. Unless you die before 35. Crystal's voice was smooth, confident. Then it passes automatically to your surviving spouse. I already checked the paperwork, baby. Had a lawyer look at it. Not Edward, obviously, but someone discreet. It's all there, black and white. If you die before 35, I inherit everything. No waiting, no conditions. A pause. Longer this time. I could hear Christopher breathing on the recording, thinking, weighing the risks, calculating whether $3 million was worth betraying his father. And I already knew the answer because I was sitting here listening to this recording, and Christopher was dead. What about Dad? He asked finally. His voice was softer now, almost guilty. He'll be devastated. He lost Mom 4 years ago. If he thinks I'm dead too, he'll grieve. Crystal's voice was patient, almost kind. The tone you'd use with a child asking why the sky is blue, and then he'll move on. That's what people do, Christopher. They grieve and they cry and they go to therapy and eventually they move on. Your dad's strong. He'll survive, but he'll think I'm dead, and you'll be alive, free out of debt, starting fresh. Crystal paused. Let that sink in. Then isn't that worth more than your father's feelings? Isn't your life, your actual life, your freedom? Worth a few months of his grief? I wanted to scream, wanted to reach through time, through the recording, grab my son by the shoulders, and shake him until he saw sense. Saw what she was doing, saw that she was manipulating him, twisting his desperation into something monstrous. But I couldn't because this conversation had happened 6 weeks before Christopher died. 6 weeks before I stood at his grave and threw dirt on his casket. And I'd known nothing, suspected nothing. I'd been sitting in my house probably working on blueprints or drinking coffee or doing something mundane. While 3 miles away, my son was agreeing to destroy me. Christopher's voice came back quieter, now resolved. Okay, that one word, 2 syllables, a death sentence. Okay. Crystal's voice lifted, hopeful, triumphant. You mean it? Yeah, I mean it. Let's do it. Let's fake my death. Crystal laughed. Bright, genuine. The kind of laugh you hear from someone who just won the lottery or got exactly what they wanted for Christmas. I knew you'd see it my way. I knew you were smart enough to understand. When do we start soon? We need time to set everything up. Get the details right. Make sure there's no paper trail, no digital footprint, nothing that leads back to us. But soon, maybe 2 months by summer? 2 months? Christopher repeated like he was testing the words, trying them on. And then I'm dead. And then you're free. The recording clicked off. Silence. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I sat there, couldn't move, couldn't speak, just stared at the laptop like it might offer some explanation, some context that would make this okay. It didn't. Santos didn't move either, just sat across from me, hands folded on the table, watching, waiting. Finally, I managed to speak. My voice didn't sound like mine. He agreed. Yes, he was going to fake his death. Let me think he was gone, steal everything. Yes. I closed my eyes and I never knew, never suspected. Mr. Morrison. Santos's voice was gentle. Professional sympathy. Christopher was your son. You loved him. You trusted him. That's not a weakness. That's what parents do. It got him killed. Santos didn't argue because it was true. Christopher's greed, his desperation, his willingness to betray me, it had gotten him killed. Crystal had used it, twisted, it turned it into a weapon. There are 2 more recordings, Santos said quietly. I opened my eyes, looked at the laptop at the 2 remaining files. Recordings, O2 Crystal backup. MPP3 May 9's recording, ZO3 final, MP3 October 12th, May 9th, 3 weeks after this conversation, 3 weeks before Christopher called me at 2:37 a.m., terrified, begging me to be careful. 3 weeks before he died, October 12th, the night he died. The second recording, Santos said it's just Crystal talking to herself, making notes. We think about changing the plan. Changing it how Santos met my eyes. She decided Christopher was a liability that he'd panic confess, ruin everything. A pause. She decided she didn't need him anymore. My stomach dropped. Play it, I said. Kenneth, play it. Santos hesitated, then reached for the laptop, clicked on the second file. Santos's hand hovered over the trackpad for a moment. She looked at me one more time, silently asking if I was sure. I nodded. She clicked the second file. Recording, no Crystal, backup, MP3, May 9th. The audio started. No static this time. Just silence for 3 seconds. Then Crystal's voice alone, clear, like she was sitting in a quiet room, speaking directly into her phone. Change of plans. Her tone was different. Not the warm, persuasive voice she'd used with Christopher in the first recording. This was colder, sharper, the voice of someone solving a problem. Christopher's becoming a liability. He's weak. Yesterday, he started talking about backing out. Said he's been having nightmares about his dad finding out. Said, maybe we should just tell Kenneth the truth. Ask for help. Work something out. A pause. I heard her breathe. Slow, controlled. I can't risk that. Can't risk him panicking and confessing. Can't risk him destroying everything because he suddenly grew a conscience. My blood went cold. Santos sat perfectly still across from me, watching my face. Crystal's voice continued. I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks now, running scenarios, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion. I don't need Christopher. I never did. The plan works better without him. In a rustling sound, papers maybe, or Crystal's shifting position. Here's what I know. Kenneth Morrison has a prescription for oxycodone, 30 pills, 10 ml each. Prescribed 6 months ago for chronic hip pain after he threw his back out. I checked the medicine cabinet last time we visited. He's barely touched them. Maybe took 5. The rest are still there. I remembered that prescription. Remember Dr. Patel writing it after I had spent 3 days barely able to walk. Remembered filling it at the CVS on Providence Road. Remember taking a few pills, hating how they made me feel, and shoving the bottle to the back of the cabinet. I'd forgotten about them. Crystal hadn't. If Christopher dies of an oxycodone overdose, she said, voice calm and methodical. The police will assume he was self-medicating depression over his gambling debts, maybe suicide. They'll find his history, the money he owes, the pressure he's under. They'll talk to me, and I'll play the devastated wife who had no idea how bad things had gotten. I'll cry, I'll be convincing, and they'll close the case as accidental death or possible suicide. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I was hearing. Either way, I still get the payout. Life insurance pays out on accidental death. And suicide. Well, Christopher's policy is 3 years old. Most policies have a 2-year suicide clause. After that, they pay regardless. Another pause. I heard liquid pouring a drink, maybe water or wine. $3.3 million and I don't have to split it. Don't have to worry about Christopher getting cold feet in Mexico. Don't have to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder wondering if he'll crack and turn himself in. Santos reached across the table, put her hand on mine. I didn't realize I was shaking until I felt her touch. I can stop it, Santos said quietly. We don't have to listen to the rest. I shook my head, pulled my hand away. Keep going. Santos hesitated, then let the recording play. Crystal's voice came back. I'll do it when Kenneth's out of town. Or better yet, when he's home but not paying attention. Christopher trusts me completely. I'll tell him we need to practice the overdose for the fake death plan. Make it look realistic. He'll take the pills voluntarily because he thinks it's rehearsal, and by the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. My vision blurred, tears. I didn't know I was crying. The beauty of it, Crystal continued, almost excited now, is that Kenneth will never know. He'll think his son died from pills. Christopher got somewhere else. He'll grieve. He'll blame himself for not seeing the signs. And I'll be there, the grieving daughter-in-law, collecting my inheritance and disappearing 6 months later. Clean, simple, perfect. The recording ended abrupt, like she just stopped talking mid-thought and hit the stop button. Silence filled the room. I sat there, hands on the table, shaking, tears running down my face. Santos handed me a box of tissues without saying anything. She planned it, my voice cracked. She planned to murder my son with my pills, my prescription. Yes. And she was going to let me think it was suicide. Let me spend the rest of my life wondering what I missed, what I could have done differently. Santos nodded. Her jaw was tight, angry. This recording is a full confession to premeditated murder. Mr. Morrison? Crystal Morrison planned to kill your son. Used your medication as the weapon, and she documented the whole thing. I wiped my face, tried to steady my breathing. Why would she record this? Why keep evidence insurance? Santos said if Christopher ever turned on her, if he went to the police, If he tried to blackmail her, she'd have proof he was complicit in the original fraud scheme. Mutually assured destruction. She gestured at the laptop. She probably planned to delete these recordings after she got the money and disappeared, but she didn't get the chance. We arrested her too fast. I looked at the laptop at the third file still waiting. Recording Wojo 3 Final. MM3, October 12th, the night Christopher died. That one Santos said softly following my gaze. It's from that night from Christopher's apartment. Crystal recorded. She stopped, took a breath. She recorded what happened, the whole thing. Why we don't know. Maybe as proof in case anyone questioned his death. Maybe because she's a sociopath who wanted a trophy. We may never know. Santos's voice was steady, but I could hear the anger underneath. But Mr. Morris and Kenneth, that recording is 11 minutes long. It's very difficult to listen to. You'll hear your son realize what's happening. You'll hear him beg. I'll hear him die. Yes. I stared at the file. 11 minutes. The last 11 minutes of my son's life, recorded, preserved, waiting. Every instinct I had screamed at me to stop, to walk out of this room, to refuse to listen, to let Santos close the laptop and never speak of this again. But I'd made Christopher a promise. At 2:37 in the morning, 10 days before he died, when he called me crying and terrified, "Don't protect me. Tell the truth." The truth was on that recording. All of it. "Play it," I said. Santos looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached for the laptop one more time. Santos's hand hovered over the third file. Her finger trembled slightly. The first crack in her professional composure I'd seen all morning. Recording Zo3 Final, MP3 October 12th. The timestamp glowed on the screen. October 12th. 10 days before the funeral, the night my son died. "This is 11 minutes long," Santos said quietly. She wasn't looking at the laptop anymore. She was looking at me. "It's audio from Christopher's apartment." "From that night from?" She stopped, swallowed. "From when Crystal gave him the pills until he stopped breathing." I couldn't speak, just nodded. "Mr. Morrison? Kenneth?" She leaned forward. "Once I press play, you're going to hear your son die. You're going to hear him realize what's happening, hear him beg, hear him call for you, and you won't be able to help him because this already happened. It's over. He's gone." "I know." I managed. My voice was barely a whisper. "Are you absolutely sure I thought about Christopher's call?" 2:37 a.m. 10 days before he died. "Don't protect me, Dad. Tell the truth." "Play it," I said. Santos pressed play. Static white noise, then movement fabric, rustling footsteps on hardwood floor, a door closing. Crystal's voice, sweet, gentle, the voice she probably used when Christopher first fell in love with her. "Okay, baby, let's practice. If we're going to fake your death, you need to look convincing, like you're really overdosing." Christopher's laugh. Nervous. "This feels weird." "It's supposed to feel weird." That's the point. Hear a pause. The sound of pills rattling in a bottle. "Take these. We'll time how long it takes for you to start feeling the effects. Then we'll know what dosage to use for the real thing. How many is this enough to make it realistic?" "Trust me." A longer pause. Then Christopher. "Okay, but you're staying here right in case something goes wrong." "Of course, baby, I'm not going anywhere." I heard it. The sound of Christopher swallowing. Once, twice, water running, more swallowing. My son taking pills voluntarily because he trusted her. Silence for maybe 30 seconds. Background noise. A TV playing in another room, cars passing outside, normal sounds, ordinary, like nothing terrible was happening. Then Christopher's voice, different now. Slurred. Confused. "How many pills did you give me? I feel weird. Really weird. Enough to look real." Crystal's voice was still calm, still steady. Just relax. It's supposed to feel like this. No, I mean, Crystal, I can't feel my legs. How many did you give me? No response. Crystal. His voice was rising, panic creeping in. How many pills? Still nothing. Crystal louder, now desperate. Answer me. How many? And then so quiet I almost didn't hear it. Crystal spoke. All of them. The sound that came out of Christopher, it wasn't human. It was pure terror. A scream cut off by choking, by his throat closing, by his body shutting down. I wanted to look away, but there was nothing to look away from. Just speakers, just sound. Just my son dying 3 m away while I slept, while I dreamed, while I did nothing. Christopher's voice came back weaker now, gasping. You're killing me. Oh God. You're really killing me. Crystal didn't answer. Didn't try to help? I heard her breathing calm, even waiting. Why Christopher's voice was barely audible. Why would you? I loved you. I know. Crystal's voice was almost kind, like she was comforting a child. But you were going to ruin everything. I couldn't let that happen. A wet, choking sound. Christopher trying to breathe, trying to speak. Then words broken and desperate. Phone need? Call? You're not calling anyone, baby. Your phone's right here. Safe with me. Dad. Christopher's voice cracked, shattered. Need Dad. My chest caved in. I pressed my fist against my mouth to keep from screaming. He can't help you? Crystal's voice was patient. Teacher explaining a simple lesson. Nobody can help you. You took too many pills. 30 pills, Christopher. Oxycodone. Your father's prescription. By the time anyone finds you, it'll be too late. And I'll tell them you must have stolen them, that you were depressed, that I had no idea. Please. Christopher was crying now. I could hear it. Hear my son sobbing, begging. Please don't. Please. Shh. It's okay. It'll be over soon. More choking, gasping. The sound of Christopher trying to move furniture, scraping something, falling. He was trying to get to the door, trying to escape, trying to save himself. He couldn't. Dad. His voice was almost gone, a whisper, a ghost. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I love you. And then Mom. I'm sorry. Silence. Not complete silence. I could still hear breathing, but it wasn't Christopher. It was Crystal standing there waiting. I sat frozen, tears streaming down my face, listening to my son die. The recording continued, Crystal's footsteps walking across the room, the sound of her kneeling fabric rustling, checking his pulse. Probably a long pause, then her voice quiet and satisfied. It's done. Finally more movement. Water, running, pills, rattling, putting the bottle back, covering her tracks. I didn't know, didn't care. Then footsteps walking away, a door opening, closing, and silence. Real silence this time. The recording ended. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Just sat there, face buried in my hands, sobbing in a way I hadn't since Helen died. Since Christopher was 5 and fell off his bike, and I thought for one terrible moment I'd lost him. But I hadn't lost him then. He'd gotten back up. Scraped knees, bruised ego, but alive. This time he didn't get back up. Santos sat across from me, her own eyes red. Officer Harris. I'd forgotten he was even in the room. Stood by the door looking at the floor, jaw clenched. I'm sorry, Santos said. Her voice broke. I'm so sorry you had to hear that. I couldn't respond, couldn't speak. Could only hear Christopher's voice echoing in my head. Dad, I'm sorry. I love you. He'd called for me. In his final moments, when he realized what Crystal had done, when he knew he was dying, he'd called for me, and I hadn't been there. Mr. Morrison. Santos waited until I looked up. Her face was grim. Professional mask back in place, but I could see the cracks. This recording is irrefutable evidence of first-degree premeditated murder. Crystal Morrison murdered your son. Used your medication to do it, and she recorded the entire thing. why my voice was raw. Why would she record this insurance? Maybe proof that she went through with it in case anyone ever questioned his death. Or Santos hesitated. Or because she's a psychopath who wanted a trophy. We may never know. I wiped my face with the tissue Santos had given me 3 recordings ago. They were soaked now. Useless. What happens now? I asked. We add first-degree murder to the charges. Crystal's looking at life without parole. Possibly death penalty. North Carolina still has capital punishment. Santos closed the laptop. Her lawyer will probably try to plead guilty to avoid trial. But with this evidence, she gestured at the laptop. She doesn't have a defense. She's done. Done. Such a small word for such a massive thing. Crystal Morrison. The woman who'd smiled at Christopher's funeral, who'd stood in my living room, demanding my house, who'd planned this for months was done. But so was Christopher. And no amount of justice would bring him back. I need you to know something. Santos said, your son tried to warn you that call he made 10 days before he died. He knew Crystal was dangerous. He tried to protect you even knowing it might cost him everything. It cost him his life. Yes, but he died trying to save you. That counts for something. Did it? I wasn't sure anymore. Wasn't sure of anything except that my son had called my name when he was dying, and I hadn't heard him. I don't remember the drive from the police station to Edward's office. Don't remember parking. Don't remember riding the elevator to the 20th floor. I just remember standing outside his door at 4:00 p.m. Hand on the door doorknob, trying to find the strength to walk inside. Patricia looked up when I entered, took one look at my face and said nothing, just gestured toward the conference room. Edward was waiting. The laptop was open on the table Santos had sent him. Copies of all 3 recordings. He'd listened to them. I could tell by the way he looked at me the same way Santos had looked at me after recording 03 ended, like he didn't know what to say. Like there were no words big enough for what he just heard. Sit down, he said quietly. I sat. Edward closed the laptop, folded his hands on the table, took a breath. Kenneth, he said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. I nodded, waited. Recording number 1. Edward's voice was measured, professional. The tone he used when the stakes were high. The one where Christopher and Crystal planned to fake his death. To steal from you. That recording proves your son was complicit in fraud. If we submit it to the DA, Christopher's name gets destroyed. He'll be remembered as a criminal, a thief, someone who conspired to betray his own father. I didn't say anything, just listened. But Edward continued, if we only submit recordings 2 and 3 Crystal's plan to murder him and the audio of his death, we can frame Christopher as a complete victim, a manipulated by his wife, someone who had no idea what she was planning, someone who died because he trusted the wrong person. He paused. Let that sink in. Your son is dead, Kenneth. Do you really want his final legacy to be a fraud conviction? I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at Charlotte. Spread below the buildings, I had designed the streets I'd walked to the city where I'd raised my son and buried my wife and built a life that was now scattered in pieces I couldn't put back together. Edward was offering me a choice, a way to protect Christopher's memory, to let the world think he was innocent, to rewrite history so that my son died as a victim instead of a criminal. All I had to do was lie. Hide recording Hero 1. Pretend Christopher never agreed to the plan. Let people remember him as someone who loved his father instead of someone who'd planned to destroy him. It would be easy, merciful, kind, and Christopher had asked me not to do it. I thought about that phone call. 2:37 a.m. Christopher's voice breaking, terrified, desperate. When this is over, don't protect me. Tell the truth. He'd known. Even then, 10 days before he died, he'd known what he'd done, known how far he'd fallen. And he'd asked me, beg me not to cover for him, tell the truth, even if it destroyed his memory. Even if people remembered him as a criminal instead of a victim. Even if it broke my heart to do it. Because the truth mattered more than comfort, more than reputation, more than the carefully constructed story we tell ourselves to make the pain bearable. I turned from the window, looked at Edward. Submit all 3 recordings, I said. Edward blinked. Kenneth, all 3 to the DA tomorrow morning. You understand what that means? Edward leaned forward. Recording 1 will be part of the public record. Reporters will hear it. Christopher's friends will hear it. Everyone will know he planned to fake his death plan to steal from you. His obituary, his entire legacy, will include the fact that he was complicit in a fraud scheme. I know, Kenneth. Edward's voice softened. I'm asking as your lawyer and your friend, are you sure? Because once those recordings are submitted, there's no taking them back. No rewriting the narrative. Christopher will be remembered as someone who betrayed you. I sat back down, met Edward's eyes. My son made a choice, I said quietly. He chose greed over family. He chose to help Crystal steal from me. He chose to plan his own fake death so he could disappear with $3 million. My voice cracked. Yes, Crystal manipulated him. Yes, she murdered him. Yes, he tried to warn me at the end. But Christopher was an innocent Edward, and I won't lie about that to protect a ghost. Edward studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded, slow, respectful, sad. All right, he said. I'll submit all 3 recordings to the district attorney tomorrow morning. Crystal will be charged with first-degree murder, and Christopher's involvement in the fraud will be part of the official record. Thank you, Kenneth. Edward hesitated. People are going to judge you for this. They'll say you're dishonoring your son's memory. They'll say you're being cruel, unforgiving. I know. And I thought about Christopher's last words. Dad? I'm sorry. I love you. He'd been sorry. At the end, when it was too late, when Crystal's plan was already in motion, he'd been sorry. But sorry didn't change what he'd done. Didn't erase the 18 months of fraud. Didn't undo the moment he sat in his apartment and agreed to fake his death. And I'm telling the truth, I said. That's all I have left. The truth, even if it hurts, even if people hate me for it. Edward closed his legal pad, stood, extended his hand. You're a better man than most, he said. I shook his hand. But walking out of that office, riding the elevator back down to street level, getting in my truck and driving back to the Marriott, I didn't feel like a better man. I felt like a father who just chosen justice over mercy, truth over comfort. And I wasn't sure I'd made the right choice, but it was the choice Christopher had asked me to make, so I made it. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, not one of the grand chambers you see on TV with marble columns and vated ceilings, just a plain room on the 3rd floor of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, 30 folding chairs arranged in rows. 3 days after Crystal's arrest. 3 days since Santos had found the laptop. 3 days since I'd heard my son die. I sat in the front row. Edward on my left, Santos on my right. Behind us a handful of people I didn't recognize. Court staff maybe, or reporters who had heard about the case and wanted a story. At 2 p.m., the side door opened. Crystal walked in. She looked different, smaller. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup, no designer clothes, just an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs that clinked softly as she moved. She didn't look at me, didn't even glance in my direction. Just walked to the defense table where her lawyer waited. Stephen Chambers, mid-40s, expensive suit. The kind of lawyer who advertises on billboards and takes cases he thinks he can win. He stood when Crystal sat, whispered something in her ear. She nodded. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Judge Harold Bennett, 60 silver hair. A reputation for being fair but no nonsense. He sat. We sat. We're here for an emergency motion filed by Mrs. Crystal Morrison, Judge Bennett said, adjusting his glasses. Mr. Chambers, you have the floor. Chambers stood, buttoned his jacket, smiled at the judge. Warm, professional, practiced. Thank you, Your Honor. This is a straightforward matter. My client, Mrs. Crystal Morrison, is the surviving spouse of Christopher Morrison, who tragically passed away 2 weeks ago. Mr. Morrison had a trust fund established by his parents, $2.5 million, which, per the terms of the trust, passes to his spouse upon his death. He gestured to a stack of papers on his table. We've provided copies of the trust documents, the marriage certificate, and Christopher's death certificate. Everything is in order. Mrs. Morrison is the legal beneficiary. She's recently lost her husband. She's grieving, and she's facing baseless accusations from a bitter father-in-law who refuses to accept his son's death. His voice turned sympathetic, pleading, Your Honor, all we're asking is that the court release the trust funds so Mrs. Morrison can begin to rebuild her life. Judge Bennett looked unimpressed. He turned to Edward. Mr. Mitchell. Edward stood. No smile, no dramatics, just calm, methodical precision. Your Honor, I'd like to direct the court's attention to Section 7, subsection C of the amended trust agreement filed with this court 5 months ago. He walked forward, handed a copy to the judge, another to Chambers. Page 12 highlighted. Judge Bennett opened the document, read. His eyebrows rose slightly. Chambers flipped through his copy, scanning the pages. His confident smile started to falter. This amendment, Edward said, contains what's known in a state law as a poison pill clause. It states, and I quote, Any secondary beneficiary accused, charged, or convicted of fraud, theft, financial crimes, or any criminal act against the grantor, Kenneth Morrison, shall be immediately disqualified from inheritance. All assets shall transfer to the Charlotte Community Foundation. Chambers's face went pale. Edward continued, voice steady. Mrs. Morrison is currently under investigation by the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department for identity theft, bank fraud, wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes against Mr. Kenneth Morrison. She's been formally charged. The investigation is ongoing. Per the terms of this amendment, she is disqualified from inheriting the trust. Your Honor, Chambers stood up fast enough that his chair scraped backward. This is a procedural trick. Mr. Morrison amended the trust specifically to prevent my client. 5 months ago, Edward interrupted. Mr. Morrison amended this trust 5 months ago, long before his son died, long before any of this came to light. It's a standard protective clause designed to prevent fraud, and it's perfectly legal. Judge Bennett read the document again slowly, then looked at Chambers. Mr. Chambers, were you aware of this amendment? No, Your Honor, my client wasn't informed. The amendment was filed with the court. It's public record. Edward's tone was polite but firm. Mrs. Morrison could have reviewed the trust documents at any time. She chose not to. Judge Bennett closed the folder, looked at Crystal. She was staring at the table now, jaw-clenched, hands folded so tight her knuckles were white. Mrs. Morrison? The judge said, You're currently charged with multiple counts of fraud against Mr. Kenneth Morrison. Chambers leaned over, whispered to her. She nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Chambers answered for her. But my client is innocent. These charges are, I'm not here to determine guilt or innocence, Judge Bennett said. That's for a criminal trial. But according to the trust amendment, the mere accusation of fraud disqualifies Mrs. Morrison from inheritance. Is that correct, Mr. Mitchell? Yes, Your Honor. The judge nodded, wrote something on his pad, then looked up. Motion denied. The trust is frozen pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. Mrs. Morrison has no access to the funds. Chambers shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is my ruling, stands Mr. Chambers. If your client is found not guilty of all charges, she can reapply for access to the trust. Until then, it remains frozen. Judge Bennett banged his gavel. We're adjourned. He stood left through the side door. The bailiff gestured for Crystal to stand. She did slowly turn, and for the first time since entering the courtroom, she looked at me. Her eyes were cold, furious. The mask of the grieving widow was gone. This was the real Crystal. The one who'd planned to steal from me, who'd murdered my son, who thought she could walk away with $3 million. She opened her mouth, started to say something. The bailiff took her arm, led her out. The door closed behind her. Silence. Edward packed up his briefcase. 5 months ago, Kenneth, you built this trap 5 months ago, and she walked right into it. I nodded. Didn't feel victorious. Didn't feel anything except tired. She killed my son for money, I said quietly. Now she won't see a dime of it. No, Edward agreed. She won't. Santos stood, adjusted her badge. Mr. Morrison, there's one more thing we need. I looked at her. The oxycodone bottle, she said. The one Crystal used to kill Christopher. We searched your house, didn't find it. She must have taken it with her, disposed of it somewhere. But if we can find it, if we can pull her fingerprints off it, we have physical evidence linking her to the murder. You think it's still in the house? Maybe somewhere Crystal had access to, somewhere she could hide it but retrieve it later if needed? Santos tilted her head. Can you think of anywhere she might have put it? I thought about my house. About Crystal walking through it like she owned it. About the guest bathroom upstairs, the medicine cabinet, the drawer under the sink. The guest bathroom? I said second floor. She used it a lot when she visited. Santos nodded. Well, do another sweep, more thorough this time. If it's there, we'll find it. The call came 5 days after Crystal's arrest. I was back in the hotel room, still room 304, still staring at the same beige walls, when my phone rang. Santos, Mr. Morrison. We need to search your house again, specifically the bathrooms. We're looking for the oxycodone bottle Crystal used to kill Christopher. When now, if you're available, I'm already at your house. I grabbed my keys. The yellow crime scene tape was still stretched across my front porch, fluttering in the October wind. 2 police vehicles were parked in my driveway, Santos's unmarked sedan, and a white van labeled CMPD Forensic Services. Santos met me at the door. Behind her stood a man in his 50s, wearing latex gloves and carrying a metal case. Gerald Simpson, forensic specialist. I'd met him briefly the day of the arrest. Mr. Morrison. Santos shook my hand. Thanks for coming. This shouldn't take long. We stepped inside. My house felt wrong, foreign, like someone had rearranged all the furniture an inch to the left and nothing quite fit anymore. Evidence markers dotted the living room, little yellow tents with numbers. The guest bedroom door was open, the bed strip drawers pulled out. This was a crime scene now, not a home. Santos led me upstairs to the master bathroom. Your prescription records show you were prescribed 30 pills, 10 me each, 6 months ago. Oxycodone for chronic hip pain after an old injury. She looked at me. Do you still have the bottle? I opened the medicine cabinet, scanned the shelves. Ibuprofen, antacids, blood pressure medication, vitamins. No orange bottle. It was here, I said. Right here, back corner behind the Advil. I'd taken maybe 5 pills. Should have been 25 left. Santos nodded, made a note. Crystal had access to this bathroom. Yes, she and Christopher stayed here sometimes. Holidays, weekends. I stepped back from the cabinet. You think she took the bottle with her, had to. If she gave Christopher 30 pills from your prescription, she needed the bottle. The question is, where did she put it afterward? Santos turned to Simpson. Start here. Master bathroom first, then the guest bathroom downstairs. Then the kitchen, anywhere she might have had access. Simpson opened his case, pulled out a handheld UV light evidence bags, tweezers, swabs. You got it. They searched for 3 hours. I sat on the porch, watching neighbors walk dogs and push strollers, pretending not to stare at the police van in my driveway. Mrs. Chen from across the street waved tentatively. I waved back. Didn't have the energy to explain. Inside, I could hear Santos and Simpson moving through the house. Cabinets, opening drawers, sliding the occasional murmur of conversation. At 4:30, Simpson called from downstairs. "Detective, I got something." I walked back inside. Simpson was in the guest bathroom, the small one off the hallway, the one Crystal had used most often. He was crouched beside the trash can holding something with glove fingers. A small orange prescription bottle, empty, the label half peeled off. "Found it buried under paper towels and cotton balls," Simpson said. "Someone tried to hide it, but not very well." Santos took the bottle carefully, held it up to the light. Read the faded label. Kenneth Morrison, oxycodone 10 ml prescribed February 3rd, CVS Pharmacy, Providence Road. She looked at me. "This yours?" "Yes." She turned the bottle slowly. "It's been wiped clean." Exterior spotless, but she unscrewed the cap, peered inside. Sometimes people forget the inside of the cap, the rim, places you don't think about. "Can you pull prints from that?" I asked. "Maybe we'll take it to Lisa Morgan. She's the best in the state." Santos slid the bottle into an evidence bag, sealed it, labeled it. "If Crystal's prints are on this bottle anywhere on it, we've got her." The call came that night at 9:00 p.m. I was lying on the hotel bed, eyes closed, not sleeping, just existing. When the phone buzzed, Santos, I answered. "Yeah, we got her." Santos's voice was tight with satisfaction. "Lisa found a partial print on the inside edge of the cap, right where your thumb goes when you unscrew it. People always forget that spot. In a wise, it's a match. Crystal Morrison's right thumbprint. 16 points of comparison. No question." I sat up, pressed my hand against my forehead. "So the bottle links your prescription directly to Christopher's death. Combined with the recordings, we have irrefutable evidence of first-degree premeditated murder." Santos paused. "Kenneth, this is it. This is the final piece. Crystal planned to kill your son. Used your medication to do it, and we can prove every single step." I should have felt something. Relief, victory, justice. Instead, I just felt tired. "What happens now?" I asked. "We add the murder charge tomorrow morning, first degree. Crystal's looking at life without parole. Given the premeditation, the recordings, the physical evidence, her lawyer's going to recommend a plea deal, 20 to 30 years probably. Because if this goes to trial," Santos's voice was hard. "If we put those recordings in front of a jury, if we show them that bottle with her fingerprints, Crystal's looking at life without possibility of parole, maybe even death penalties. North Carolina still has capital punishment." "Good," I said. Silence on the line. Then Santos, quieter. "Kenneth, I know this doesn't bring Christopher back. I know it doesn't fix anything, but Crystal Morrison will spend the rest of her life in prison for what she did. That counts for something, does it?" "Yes, it does." I thanked her, hung up, stared at the phone in my hand. The oxycodone bottle, the one I'd filled at CVS. 6 months ago, the one I'd used 5 times and forgotten about. The one Crystal had stolen, emptied into my son's body, and tried to hide under paper towels in a trash can, the weapon that killed Christopher. And now we had it. Had her fingerprints on it, had proof. There was no escape now, no legal loophole, no last-minute technicality that would let Crystal walk free. She was done. 3 weeks after Crystal's arrest, I got the call from Edward. "Plea hearings tomorrow, 2 p.m. Crystal's going to enter a guilty plea to all charges." I'd been expecting this. Santos had told me Crystal's lawyer, Stephen Chambers, had been negotiating with the district attorney's office for 10 days, trying to avoid trial, trying to keep those recordings out of a courtroom where a jury would hear them, trying to save Crystal from a death sentence. What's the deal, I asked. 18 years federal prison, no parole for 15 plus full restitution, 3 $4,000. Edward paused. Kenneth, if this goes to trial, she's looking at life without parole, possibly death penalty. The recordings alone would guarantee a conviction. Chambers knows it. The DA knows it. Crystal knows it. So she takes the deal. She takes the deal. I hung up, stared at the hotel room wall. 18 years. Crystal would be 47 when she got out. Middle-aged alone broke. It wasn't life, but it was close enough. The courtroom was packed, not the small room from the poison pill hearing. This was courtroom 5A, one of the main chambers on the 4th floor. High ceilings, wood paneling, 40 rows of benches, and nearly every seat was filled. Reporters, court staff, a few of Christopher's old friends I recognized, but didn't have the energy to talk to. Ms. Chen from across the street, sitting 3 rows back, looking uncomfortable. I sat in the front row, Edward. On my left, Santos on my right. The 3 of us had become an unlikely team over the past month. Lawyer, detective, grieving father united by one goal, making sure Crystal Morrison paid for what she'd done. At 2 p.m., the side door opened. Crystal walked in flanked by 2 baifts. She looked different, smaller somehow. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No styling, no shine, no makeup. Her face was pale shadows under her eyes. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight, a lot of weight. 3 weeks in county jail had stripped away the polished exterior. This was Crystal without the designer clothes and the practice smile. This was who she really was. Human, breakable. She walked to the defense table. Didn't look at me, didn't look at anyone. Just kept her eyes forward, jaw tight, hands cuffed in front of her. Stephen Chambers stood when she approached. Whispered something. She nodded once. Sat down. Judge Harold Bennett entered. We all stood. He sat. We sat. We're here for the plea hearing of Crystal Ann Morrison. Judge Bennett said, adjusting his glasses. He looked at Crystal. Mrs. Morrison, please stand. She stood. Chambers stood beside her. Mrs. Morrison, you're here today to enter a plea in response to multiple criminal charges. Do you understand that? Yes, Your Honor. Her voice was quiet, steady. No emotion. And you've had sufficient time to consult with your attorney. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Bennett nodded, looked at the prosecutor's table. Ms. Thompson, please read the charges. Assistant District Attorney Nicole Thompson stood, early 40s, sharp suit, the kind of prosecutor who'd built her career on financial crimes and murder cases. She opened a folder. Your Honor, the defendant faces the following charges: 5 counts of bank fraud, 4 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of aggravated identity theft, 2 counts of forgery, 1 count of conspiracy to commit financial crimes. She paused. And 1 count of first-degree murder in the death of Christopher James Morrison. The courtroom went silent. You could hear people breathing. Judge Bennett looked at Crystal. Mrs. Morrison, how do you plead to these charges? Chambers leaned close, whispered something. Crystal's jaw tightened. For a moment I thought she might fight, might refuse, might force this to trial. But then she spoke. Guilty, Your Honor. To all charges, yes, to all charges. The judge wrote something on his pad. Ms. Morrison, do you understand that by entering a guilty plea, you are waiving your right to a trial by jury? Yes, Your Honor. Then you understand that you are admitting under oath and on the record that you committed these crimes, yes. Do you understand the sentencing range for these charges that you could face, 15 to 25 years in federal prison? Crystal's hands trembled slightly, but her voice stayed steady. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Bennett looked at Thompson. Does the state have a sentencing recommendation? Thompson stood again. Yes, Your Honor. In exchange for the defendant's guilty plea and cooperation, the state recommends 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Additionally, we recommend the defendant pay full restitution to Mr. Kenneth Morrison in the amount of $374,000 covering all fraudulent loans, credit accounts, and associated fees. The judge turned to Chambers. Mr. Chambers, does your client agree to these terms? Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Morrison. Judge Bennett looked directly at her. Do you agree to these terms? Do you understand that you will serve a minimum of 15 years before you're eligible for parole, that you will owe Mr. Morrison $374,000, that this is a binding agreement? Crystal's voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Bennett nodded. Very well. The court accepts your guilty plea. Sentencing will occur in 2 weeks. Until then, you will remain in custody. He looked at the bailiffs, removed the defendant. The bailiff stepped forward, took Crystal by the arms, and then finally she turned, looked directly at me. Her eyes weren't cold anymore, weren't calculating. They were empty, hollow, like someone had reached inside and scooped out everything that made her human, leaving just a shell. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but no words came out. The bailiffs led her away, the side door closed behind her. She was gone. The courtroom emptied slowly. People filing out, whispering to each other, reporters rushing to their cameras outside. I sat there, didn't move, couldn't move. Edward put a hand on my shoulder. Kenneth, it's over. Was it Crystal had just admitted to murdering my son? Had just agreed to spend the next 18 years in prison? Had just been forced to pay back every dollar she'd stolen. I'd won. So why did it feel like I'd lost? Santos sat down in the bench in front of me, turned around. Mr. Morrison, Kenneth. I know this doesn't change anything, doesn't bring Christopher back, but justice was served today. Crystal Morrison will spend the rest of her productive life in prison. That counts for something. I nodded, managed a weak smile. Thank you for everything. Just doing my job. You did more than that. Santos stood, shook my hand. If you need anything at all, you have my number. She left. Edward left. The courtroom emptied, and I sat there alone, staring at the empty defense table where Crystal had stood, where she'd admitted to killing my son, where she'd agreed to pay for her crimes. 18 years. Christopher would have been 50 years old by the time she got out. He'd never be 50, never be 40, never be anything. Because Crystal Morrison had decided $3 million was worth more than his life. And now she'd spent 18 years learning that it wasn't. 2 weeks after they found the bottle, I went back to court for Crystal's sentencing. Same courthouse, same courtroom, same beige walls and fluorescent lights. But the air felt different, heavier, final. Judge Harold Bennett presided. Crystal stood at the defense table in her orange jumpsuit, hands scuffed in front of her face, blank. Stephen Chambers stood beside her, looking tired and defeated. He'd tried to negotiate a better deal, 15 years instead of 18. The DA had refused. The courtroom was fuller this time. Reporters in the back rows, a few of Christopher's old friends, Mrs. Chin from across the street, who'd probably come out of curiosity more than anything else. I sat in the front row, Edward on my left, Santos on my right, witnesses to the end. Judge Bennett adjusted his glasses, read from a document on his bench. Crystal Morrison. You have entered a guilty plea to 5 counts of bank fraud, 4 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of aggravated identity theft, 2 counts of forgery, 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud, and 1 count of first-degree murder in the death of Christopher James Morrison. Crystal didn't move, didn't react, just stared straight ahead. The court sentences you to 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Additionally, you're ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $374,000 to Mr. Kenneth Morrison, covering all fraudulent loans and credit accounts opened in his name. Judge Bennett paused, looked directly at Crystal. Mrs. Morris in this court finds your actions to have been calculated, deliberate, and utterly without remorse. You preyed upon a grieving widower hour. You manipulated his son into betraying him. And when your scheme began to unravel, you murdered that young man using medications stolen from his father's home. His voice was hard. You planned this. You recorded it. And you showed no mercy. This sentence reflects the severity of your crimes. Crystal's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Do you have anything to say before this court? Judge Bennett asked. Chambers leaned over, whispered something. Crystal shook her head. No, Your Honor. Then this court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Final absolute. Two bailiffs stepped forward, took Crystal by the arms, led her toward the side door. She didn't look back, didn't glance at me, just walked out of the courtroom and out of my life forever. 18 years. She'd be 53 when she got out, middle-aged alone with nothing. I waited for the satisfaction, the sense of justice served the feeling that I'd won. It didn't come. 3 months later, I sat alone in my house. The quiet was the worst part. I'd forgotten how quiet a house could be when you lived in it by yourself. No TV in the other room. No footsteps upstairs. No phone ringing. Just silence pressing in from every direction. The forensic team was long gone. The yellow tape had been removed. The evidence markers packed away. Crystal's things, her clothes, her makeup, the expensive furniture she'd insisted Christopher buy, all cleared out, donated, or thrown away. The Helilock had been paid off with the restitution money. The credit cards were closed. My credit score was slowly recovering. The fraud charges had been dropped from my record victim of identity theft, the reports now said. On paper, everything was fixed. On paper, I'd won. I got my house back. Got justice for my son. Got Crystal locked away for nearly 2 decades. But sitting in my study, the room where I designed buildings and taught Christopher to draft blueprints and spent Sunday mornings with Helen drinking coffee, I felt nothing but empty. The recordings played in my head sometimes late at night when I couldn't sleep. Christopher's voice. Dad, I'm sorry. I love you. I wondered if I'd made the right choice. Wondered if I should have hidden recording 01. Let people remember Christopher as a victim instead of a co-conspirator. Spared him the judgment. Protected his memory. But he'd asked me not to. Don't protect me. Tell the truth. So I had. And now everyone knew. Everyone knew my son had planned to fake his death. Planned to steal from me. Planned to disappear with $3 million. His obituary included it. The newspaper articles included it. His friends knew. His former co-workers knew. Christopher Morrison, fraud conspirator, victim both. I couldn't separate the two anymore. Couldn't remember him without also remembering what he'd done, what he'd chosen, who he'd become in those final months. I walked out to the back porch, November, now cold. The garden Helen had planted 20 years ago had grown wild, overgrown rose bushes, weeds creeping through the flower beds. But the roses were still blooming, stubborn, persistent. I remembered something Helen had written in a letter she had left for me before she died. A letter I'd found in her desk drawer, 2 years after the funeral, tucked inside, and an envelope labeled, "For Kenneth, when you need it." I'd needed it a lot lately. Love him through his failures, Kenneth. That's all we can do as parents, love them. Even when they break our hearts, even when they make choices we don't understand, even when they're gone and we're left picking up the pieces, love them anyway. I sat down on the porch steps, let myself cry. For Helen, for Christopher, for the family I'd lost twice. Once to cancer, once to greed, for the man I used to be, the man who thought he understood his son, who thought he could protect him, who thought love was enough. It wasn't. I realized something sitting there, tears running down my face, roses blooming in the November cold. I hadn't lost Christopher twice. I'd lost him once, just once. The day he sat in his apartment and agreed to betray me. The day he chose money over family, greed over love. Everything after that, the recordings, the murder, the trial was just consequence. Dominoes falling, a structure collapsing because the foundation had already cracked. Crystal had killed him. But Christopher had been dying long before that night. I took a deep breath, wiped my face, spoke to the empty garden. I won. I got justice. I got my house back. I got Crystal locked away. My voice cracked. But I lost you anyway. Lost you the moment you made that choice, and I'll carry that for the rest of my life. The sun was setting over Charlotte, orange and pink bleeding across the sky. Beautiful and indifferent. I walked back inside, through the kitchen, through the living room, up the stairs to my bedroom. The house felt too big, too empty, too full of ghosts. But it was mine. I'd fought for it, bled for it, sacrificed my son's memory for it. Sometimes that had to be enough. They say time heals all wounds, but sitting here 3 months after Crystal's sentencing, I've learned something different. Time doesn't heal, it just teaches you to live with the scars. I'm Kenneth Morrison, I'm 63 years old, and I've spent the last 6 months learning that sometimes the people you love most are the ones who hurt you deepest. Don't be like me. Don't ignore the red flags because you want to believe the best in people. Don't wait until it's too late to protect yourself. Don't assume that blood and love are enough to keep someone honest. My son made choices, bad choices, and I paid the price alongside him. But here's what I've learned and what I want you to remember. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Truth matters more than comfort. And sometimes the hardest thing a parent can do is let their child face the consequences of their actions. The Bible says in Proverbs 22:6, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." I trained Christopher to be honest, to be kind, to value family. But in the end, he made his own choices, and that's not on me, that's on him. This is a true story. Every word, every recording, every moment of pain, I'm sharing it here on Burn Revenge Stories because I want you to learn from my mistakes. I want you to protect yourself, to trust your instincts, to know that justice and healing are not the same thing. And I want you to know you're not alone. If this true story resonated with you, please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Hit that subscribe button for more real grandpa stories about life loss and hard-earned wisdom. And if you know someone who needs to hear this true story, share it with them. Your support keeps grandpa stories like mine alive. Thank you for listening.